considered by some to be one of the greatest comedians on film of all time. A man really just with his imagery could conjure up laughter, fun and an iconic look. We're talking about this man, of course, Charlie Chaplin. Now, Charlie Chaplin's life has been very much celebrated, and I've been lucky enough to go on the trail of where he lived in South London and how he started out. And a lot of people will know this who are film aficionados, that of course they literally started out together, him and Stan Laurel. And it's amazing to think, isn't it, that two ex-Brits went along in the very early days of Hollywood and conquered it, you know. When you think about it, they were taking a chance, going all that way into a brand new industry that was literally sort of, well, fledgling at the start. And then they both became world icons for a long period. Now, as many people know on the show, and I know I often say this, I've been lucky enough to interview some wonderful people, including this man, Sir Richard Attenborough. And he was just wonderful. For many people of a generation, and this is the thing, many people realise, of course, that he was the man that helped craft and shape the delivery, form, and the projection for the late and beautiful Princess Diana when she was going into public speaking on a bigger scale. And as he told me, she was a delightful lady that didn't really have sort of the confidence in herself, but eventually found her inner core and, as we all know, became a rather consummate speaker. But it was him, of course, talking about his career that fascinated me. And in particular, he was the man behind this wonderful 1992 film. Now, I don't know if you know this, but again, it's when you look back at the interview and go over things and think, wow, I didn't realise that. You see, Richard said originally they were not going to make a movie, which I don't know if you realise eventually starred Robert Downey Jr. and Geraldine Chaplin, of course, a real life family member, playing Charlie Chaplin's mother, Hannah, in the movie. What was interesting about this particular story, though, was that it's always about money. Let me explain. Good to see you as ever, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad you enjoy these trips down nostalgic memory lane. It does get you thinking, doesn't it? You know, how old were you when you first saw a Charlie Chaplin film? I think for me, they were sort of on Saturday morning TV, you know, the sort of thing where you come over and think, oh, wow, you know, what's this? And then it was normally sandwiched between things like Casey Jones. Do you remember that? You do, of course. Yes, the railway pioneer. Wonderful, wonderful that, wasn't it? It's funny what you remember. And then, of course, latterly, movies like The Countess from Hong Kong, starring the beautiful Sophia Loren and Marlon Brando, I believe. Now, Charlie Chaplin, as I say, really made his mark on the movies. And according to Richard Attenborough, when he was trying to put this movie together, this is where it gets really interesting for me, because it doesn't matter what decade, what era you are in. The studios rule the roost. Even today, whether you're Netflix, whatever, they decide who you can have. And originally, they wanted to have the very funny, very talented and supremely versatile Robin Williams, right? And I thought, in a sense, that he would make a very good Chaplin. And I met Robin, as you know, on a couple of occasions. Manic, lovely, very kind, sweet, down-to-earth man. I'm not quite sure if I would have seen him in the title role, though. But according to Richard, the studio said, look, he's a box office name. We need to drag people in, and that was the deal. When Robin said, not quite for me, they then looked at Billy Crystal, and he'd had a very successful career of things like When Harry Met Sally and things like that. And at one point they were looking towards the Princess of Wales' favourite movie star, none other than Tom Cruise. Yes, he was a big name, of course, across the 80s and still remains one today. But eventually they had to settle on Robert Downey Jr. And I don't mean that in a nasty way or anything like that. He was still a big name in that period. But Robert Downey Jr. truly made the movie his own. I mean, literally, I thought it was a brilliant performance. And I don't know if you know this, but some of the original music hall scenes are filmed in the beautiful Hackney Empire on Mare Street in the very heart of Hackney, where Charlie actually performed. Richard did a lot of things where he could film in the real areas. And what he told me in this particular interview was the fact that, well, he loved making the movie. He realised, in fact, that the studio weren't necessarily behind him. By that, he said, look, you know, he knew what he was making, and it may do well, perhaps on sales of VHS, do you remember that video recorder? And then, of course, DVD latterly. But even he never saw it necessarily as a box office mega hit. It didn't fit the times, as it were, which were all Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. You get the picture. But it did actually finally turn a profit about 15 years after the making. And as Richard said to me, well, eventually we got there. But if you haven't seen it, and this is the point of where I wanted to sort of, it is, I think elements of it at least are free on YouTube. Do have a look, because we often forget some of these greats that have given us so much fun, so much laughter, and a little bit like my duo favourites, Laurel and Hardy. Never forget, somebody had to start it, and Charlie Chaplin certainly started it, and he literally made the little tramp his own. Now, hope you've got a lot of memories of Charlie right now. Neil Sean in the very heart of Yorkshire.